Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're really going to tear into some fascinating source material. It's centered around this framework called From Seed to Shepherd.
That's right.
And it gets right at one of the biggest, well, existential risks for any mission-driven group, really. The founder problem.
Yeah, the classic scenario. You see it all the time.
Right, where the organization's success is just completely tied up with one person.
Yeah.
And, the moment they step back or step away.
The whole thing risks collapse. It's a huge issue.
Exactly. So our mission today is to unpack the specific ideas, the frameworks from these sources for building leadership that, well, that lasts. That doesn't just manage what's there now, but actually multiplies.
Multiplies it, yeah, into new generations, new communities.
Which is a totally different way of thinking about success.
It really is. The material basically forces you to redefine success from the ground up. It starts with this theological frame, actually, that the mission itself has to be generative.
Generative, meaning?
Right. Meaning it has to reproduce itself. If you're building a movement, multiplication isn't just, a smart strategy add-on. It's core. It's stewardship. It's baked into the original design. The sources point back to that biblical imagery, fruit-bearing, like John 15:8.
Okay.
Essentially suggesting that if the mission isn't reproducing, if it isn't bearing fruit that bears more fruit, then the system itself is, well, fundamentally broken.
Okay, so let's unpack that. There's this core tension the source identifies, right? Between things that endure and things that just fade away.
Yes, a critical distinction.
They talk about measuring success by platform versus measuring it by posterity.
That's the heart of it. Platform is all the immediate stuff, the stuff that often strokes the ego.
Like what? Big building.
Gig buildings, yeah. How many views a sermon gets online, the applause after a talk, the visible, often temporary metrics.
The things people often point to as success.
Exactly. But posterity, that's completely different. That's the movement itself. Does it self-replicate? Does it endure? Does it keep pursuing the mission long after the founder's voice isn't the main one anymore?
That requires a very different kind of leadership focus then.
Oh, absolutely. Deep humility, actually. Because if the organization is built around the founder's celebrity, their personal charisma, the platform...
You building in fragility?
You've nailed it. It creates an inevitable single point of failure. So the source challenges leaders. Shift your investment. Focus on building roots, not just chasing visible fruit.
Roots, not just fruit. I like that.
Because if you only focus on the fruit, the immediate results, you might get a great harvest now, but you have zero resilience, zero succession planning. The roots are what allow it to survive the winter,
And this isn't just abstract theory, is it? The material brings in examples.
Right, it's grounded. We see these principles in action, especially if you look at global mission work historically and today.
They mention things like CPMs, church planting movements.
Yes, CPMs and also DMMs, disciple-making movements.
Okay, so when we look at those models, what's the key? What makes them sustainable according to this material?
Well, what's fascinating and maybe counterintuitive for some is that their sustainability isn't tied to massive budgets or complex organization.
No.
It's almost entirely linked to, indigenous believers rapidly reproducing the mission themselves.
Using simple methods.
Very simple, repeatable methods. Things like basic Bible-centered discovery groups, identifying potential leaders really early on, and critically, really rapid training processes that empower local people quickly, instead of locking leadership up behind, say, years of external, often inaccessible credentialing.
Okay, that makes sense. Empowering people on the ground fast.
Right.
So if multiplication is the goal, step one is finding the right people. Identification.
Crucial first step.
And the source is pretty direct here. It says we need to kind of screen out the obvious traits sometimes, like charisma.
Well, yeah, or at least not make them the first thing you look for, because those flashy traits often correlate more with platform builders, people who build things around themselves.
Not posterity builders,
Yeah.
The ones who build things that outlast them.
Precisely.
Yeah.
So we move into what they call phase one, early identification. And the goal here is to look past the obvious, look past the charisma, and focus on these core capacity markers.
The quieter qualities.
Often, yes. The things that show up when nobody's really watching. The source lists them clearly. A servant disposition, genuine teachability, proven faithfulness, specifically in small, often unspectacular tasks, and just basic relational trustworthiness within their circle.
Which leads to that memorable acronym they use. You're not looking for the loudest voice.
No.
You're looking for someone who is F.A.T.
Right. Faithful, available, and teachable.
Faithful, available, teachable. F.A.T.
And that character assessment, the F.A.T criteria, it's presented as the absolute non-negotiable foundation.
Why those three specifically?
Well, the material really leans into the logic from Luke 16.10, faithfulness and the very little being the best predictor.
Ah, right. If someone's dependable with small things.
They demonstrate the kind of character needed for bigger stewardship later. It's about their core reliability.
Okay, but I have to push back a little here. If we only prioritize FET character, dependability, aren't we potentially missing out on, say, the visionary, the disruptor?
That's a fair question.
The person who might not be great at replying to emails but could spark huge growth or innovation? Does the source address that trade-off?
It does, implicitly at least. It argues that while vision is vital, an organization built purely on visionary fragility, someone brilliant but unreliable is doomed to fail eventually. The vision can often come from the founder or the core team, but the actual stewardship, the carrying out of the mission day to day, week to week, that requires sustained character. The implication seems to be you can often train skills and even nurture vision in a faithful person.
But you can't train faithfulness into someone who isn't fundamentally reliable.
Exactly. Character is harder to teach than competence.
Which brings us to that really practical, almost mundane test they suggest. You don't give a potential leader a big, splashy project right away.
No, you do the opposite. You give them something insignificant, almost boring.
Why?
Because it forces you, as the leader, to look at their actual behavior, not just their stated enthusiasm or potential. The test is simple. Give someone a small, recurring, maybe even slightly thankless task.
Like
maybe following up with first-time visitors consistently every week, or making sure the coffee station is always stocked before the meeting,
right.
or managing a tiny budget for some small team activity.
Okay, low-stakes stuff.
Very low stakes. Then you just observe, do they actually do it consistently for, say, 3 months without you having to constantly remind them or chase them?
So you're not testing their coffee-making skills?
Not at all. You're testing the underlying pattern of their life, their integrity, their commitment, when no one's making the big deal about it.
I see.
Because if they can't steward that small, unglamorous responsibility faithfully, the source argues, they've basically demonstrated they aren't ready for larger stewardship. That data point is far more reliable than how well they talk in a meeting.
Okay, that's powerful. So let's say we've found some FAT people using these kinds of indicators. Now comes the next big challenge, the pipeline.
Yes, the formation process.
Finding them is one thing, but the source suggests this training phase is where many movements actually fall down. Leaders mistake just giving information for real formation. How do you actually form these people into shepherds who can reproduce the mission?
Well, the big operational shift the material advocates for is prioritizing hands-on apprenticeship and formation over, say, abstract academic credentialism.
Less classroom, more doing.
More doing, yes, but doing with guidance and intentionality. The most effective multiplication movements described rely on simple, highly repeatable practices.
Like what kind of practices?
Think really reproducible Bible study formats that don't require a seminary degree to lead, or decentralized house gatherings that are easy to start and replicate. The key is simplicity.
Because complexity kills multiplication.
Absolutely. If it takes a PhD to lead something, you can't multiply it quickly or widely. So the methods need to transfer the core DNA, not just complex content.
Which is where we hear about things like T4T, training for trainers.
Rare.
Why is that model so crucial in these systems?
T4T is fundamental because it hardwires reproduction into the system. The whole point of T4T isn't just to train a good leader.
Oh.
It's to train someone who can immediately turn around and train other trainers.
Okay, so every new leader is immediately a potential multiplier.
Precisely. They aren't just an endpoint who consumes resources or needs constant propping up. They're equipped from the start to extend the mission outward.
And they pair that concept with another acronym, MAWL.
Yes, MAWL. It stands for Model Assist, Watch, Leave, Launch.
That sounds like a very deliberate process of letting go.
It is. It's a cycle for intentionally developing and releasing leaders. It ensures everyone is equipped to duplicate themselves. You start by modeling the task perfectly yourself.
Okay, show them how.
Then you assist them as they try it for the first time. You're right there with them. Then you step back a bit and just watch them do it independently, offering feedback and oversight.
Right.
And then, the crucial step, You leave them to fully own it. And ideally, you launch them into new areas of responsibility where they can repeat the cycle with others.
So it's this intentional handoff, moving people from dependence to independence to interdependence, maybe.
Exactly. That intentional release, that MAWL cycle, is really the practical engine driving that multiplication DNA through the system.
Okay, but if the goal is a fully formed shepherd, it can't just be about skills and process, right? The source talks about needing holistic formation, head, heart, and hands.
Yes, absolutely crucial. It can't just be intellectual transfer.
So break that down. Head, heart, hands.
Okay. Head is about theological clarity. It needs to be robust enough to hold sound doctrine, but simple enough to be easily taught and passed on. Can they grasp and articulate the core truth?
Got it. And
Hands. Hands are the practical skills, the competencies, things like learning how to mediate conflict, maybe doing supervised pastoral visits, understanding basic budgeting, even just knowing how to run an effective meeting. Tangible skills.
okay, head and hands seem relatively trainable, maybe testable, but the heart component, that feels like the trickiest part. How does the source suggest we evaluate or form the heart?
Yeah, and the material is pretty blunt about this. The heart is about spirit-formed character, love, patience, humility, resilience.
So if you don't learn in a workshop.
Exactly. You can't really test it in a classroom setting. The source argues it's tested and refined primarily in what it calls the pruning seasons of real life.
Pruning seasons, like difficulty.
Difficulty, yeah. Suffering, maybe failure, facing opposition over a long period. The leadership pipeline, therefore, shouldn't shield developing leaders from these things. It needs to intentionally, perhaps carefully, expose them to environments where their character, their heart, is actually tested. Can they integrate what they know, head, and who they are becoming, heart, into what they actually do, hands under pressure?
Wow, okay, that's a high bar. Which leads us, I think, to the really tough part. Measurement.
Always the challenge.
If we're supposed to throw out the old metrics people are comfortable with, attendance, budgets, building size, how on earth do you know if this multiplication DNA stuff is actually taking root and working?
You have to be ruthless, according to the source. You have to replace the vanity metrics, as they call them,
Vanity metrics, love that term.
with genuine reproduction metrics. These are the vital signs of generative health, not just institutional size.
Okay, so give us specifics. What should we be tracking instead, according to this material, maybe in their phase 5?
They lay out some really clear indicators. First, how many new leaders are being multiplied, say, per 3 years? A simple output.
Okay, leaders multiplied.
Second, how many new house groups or mission units or whatever your basic structure is are being launched per quarter? Are you actually expanding?
Groups launched. Makes sense.
Third, what percentage of your existing leaders can successfully teach and replicate a core process, like that simple Bible study method? Does the system actually work simply?
Testing the transferability.
Exactly. And finally, something like elder transition readiness timelines. Are you actively planning for succession? Is it just talk, or is there a real timeline and qualitative assessment?
Right.
The point is, if those numbers, the reproduction metrics, are flat or declining, the DNA is compromised. It doesn't matter how big the Sunday attendance is.
That really shifts the focus. But it raises a critical tension, doesn't it? The speed versus depth issue.
Ah, yes, the classic dilemma.
If you're pushing for rapid multiplication to ensure posterity, aren't you inherently risking creating shallow disciples? Is there a trade-off you just have to accept between speed and theological depth?
It's a very real tension, and the source material definitely acknowledges it. Rapid multiplication can absolutely produce shallow disciples if the theological anchor points are weak or drift.
So what's the solution they propose? Slow down.
Interestingly, no. The solution proposed isn't necessarily to slow down the multiplication engine. It's to focus intensely on the fidelity of what's being multiplied.
Fidelity. Meaning
keeping the core doctrine, the essential theological DNA, incredibly simple, but absolutely non-negotiable.
Simple but tight.
Exactly. You guard the depth not by adding complexity, but by ensuring the few essential truths you do transmit are crystal clear, deeply understood, and non-corruptible as they spread. That way, multiplication can potentially remain both rapid and theologically sound.
That makes a lot of sense. Keep the core pure and let it run.
Oh.
Okay, well, that brings us towards the end of this deep dive. We've traced quite a journey here.
We have.
From identifying that initial seed, finding those F.A.T leaders, through navigating that holistic formation pipeline, head, heart, and hands.
Right through to the crucial measurement phase, swapping vanity metrics for reproduction metrics.
It really does feel like this material offers a pretty compelling roadmap for anyone thinking about intentional leadership development that aims for legacy, for posterity, not just immediate, visible success.
I think so. And the core paradox it leaves us with is worth sitting with for a moment.
Which is?
That ultimate success, viewed through this lens of posterity, it just isn't measured by the size of the building or the reach of one person's sermon or the applause after a big event.
No.
It's measured by something much quieter, by the steady, often unseen multiplication of humble, faithful shepherds and elders, maybe meeting around a kitchen table somewhere, discipling others, making decisions, and sending out the next wave of leaders to do the same thing.
That quiet, persistent multiplication, that's what actually endures.
That's the argument.
Okay, so for you, our listener, let's leave you with a final, provocative thought to chew on this week, drawing directly from this material. If the highest aim really is multiplication, if it's about developing and releasing others,
Ask yourself this.
what is the one essential task, maybe even something you enjoy or are good at, that you are currently holding on to, that you must intentionally delegate or let go of this week? Specifically so that a potential future F.A.T. leader can step into it, begin their own MAWL cycle, and start their journey toward launch. What needs to be handed off?